Today we're sitting down with director, writer, producer, composer, the illustrious Johnny Royal.
You're listening to The First Three Knocks, a Masonic podcast in the District of York, where we discuss topics for the betterment of Masonry. The opinions discussed in this podcast are those of the individual and do not represent the views of Grand Lodge or any other Masonic body. Now, here are your hosts.
Let's talk about what's real.
I became a Freemason because I was obsessed with understanding what death was at a very young age.
It encourages the initiate to be comfortable with the fact that we are not immortal.
So how are you going to live your life in the time that you're here?
If you are going to know yourself, then you've got to ask these questions.
The fundamental message of Masonry is man's pursuit of communion with his Creator.
It was very much this out-of-body experience.
I learned secrecy of the inner self.
It's a time outside of time.
You're in another world.
The principles of Freemasonry are eternal.
Well, welcome to the First Three Knocks. Today we have an exciting episode. We have the illustrious Johnny Royal. We got him on the phone today. He's hailing all the way out from California, and that was the trailer of one of the movies he produced and wrote and directed, 33 and Beyond, the Royal Art of Masonry. It's a documentary that is a must-watch. Steve and I both took a look at it not too long ago, and it really just touches on all parts of Masonry, from Blue Lodge, the first 3 degrees, all the way up to the 33rd degree. And again, it's for the public, it's for Masons abroad, it's for everybody. It really is a fantastic watch. There's a couple, there's another movie that we're going to talk about shortly after as well. But again, we are excited to have Johnny on the show today. And Johnny, you there?
I'm here. Thank you for having me.
Hey, again, thank you for taking the time out of your busy schedule to sit with the guys at the First Three Knocks. Unfortunately, one of the co-hosts, Bert, is away on business. So you got Brother Gino Scovia here with the Rising Sun, sitting currently as Junior Warden, and our awesome and talented producer, Brother Steve Sprott, who just became a Master Mason a month ago.
That's right. Hello, hello.
All right. So, Johnny, again, thanks for taking the time and sitting out with us here. Why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself as far as where you sit within Masonry, all the different concordant bodies, and we'll kind of pick your brain a little bit today to see what got you there and where you're going next.
Sure. So I was initiated in 2008. I was raised in 2011, and shortly thereafter, I joined the Scottish Rite and the York Rite. So I went through degrees 4 through 32 for the Scottish Rite. So I'm not a 33rd degree Mason, just to make that clear.
Yep.
And then on the York Rite side, I went through Royal Arch, Cryptic Council, and the Commandery of Knights Templar. And then over the years, I started digging a little deeper. I joined the line. I'm currently the senior deacon at Santa Monica Palisades Lodge, number 307, in the Los Angeles Valley Scottish Rite. I'm past commander of Kadosh, currently the orator of the chapter of Rose Croix, and I'm the assistant director of the work. So I help oversee and direct some of the degrees. I'm in most of the degrees that we perform. And I'm also a member of the AMD, the Allied Masonic Degrees body, which is an extension of the Royal Arch. And going forward, there's a couple other things that are exciting that I'm looking forward to that I can't touch on yet because they're not official. But in 2018, I was one of the Grand Lodge of California ritual competition winners for Division 7. So Masonry is a very big part of my life. I study it on a daily basis. I try to practice it in my daily life.
Wow, yeah, evidently.
And my son River, he is a member of the D Malay Squires, which is it's a division of D Malay for boys between the ages of 9 and 11. And he was elected master of his manor, and he just recently gave his first. He led the first initiation for 2 young boys. He did 14 pages of ritual, all by memory.
Good for him.
And, I'm sorry, you said he was 9?
Yeah, he's 9.
Wow,
He's
that's amazing.
Yeah, and he's an avid chess player and a reader. And, he qualified for the International World Chess Championship.
Wow.
So we're really proud of him.
That's amazing.
And,
that's awesome.
Yeah.
Now, you just touched base a little bit on your Masonic career and whatnot, but again, I introduced you as director, writer, producer, composer. Can you share with us a little bit of that kind of stuff that you also work on? Because, I mean, through Masonry in that particular career that you've joined and you're still working and following, sounds like you're pretty busy with that, but what else does Johnny do?
Sure. So just going back, I started working in investments, and at the same time, I played music. I was in a band, and in 2001, I was in a band that got signed to Elektra Records, and I was working on the 61st floor of 2 World Trade Center. So my band, we left for tour in August, and then shortly thereafter, the 9/11 attacks occurred.
Wow.
So it's a strange cliche, but rock and roll kind of saved my life when it kills most people. And through music, after music, I started getting into music marketing. I did really well doing that, which led me into advertising, which got me into directing. So I directed a lot of commercials, advertising commercials. And after I received my fellowcraft degree, I thought it was just so beautiful that I wanted to find a way to visually show the story of Freemasonry to the world without obviously breaking oaths or obligations that I had taken, but to show the beauty of it and what it teaches, and to display that in a way to the world that that it was really a love letter to the craft. So I started working on the film in 2010, and it took 7 years to film and complete that movie. And the reason being was that it was like, how do I tell the full story of American Freemasonry?
If you haven't gone through it yet.
And it differs all over the world. But it was really there's a good friend of mine who's the former secretary of the Guthrie Valley the Guthrie Valley Scottish Rite in Oklahoma. I'm also a member there. I've been a member there since 2011. But his name's Robert Davis, or Bob Davis, and he's a published author. He's one of the most brilliant Freemasons I've ever known, and he's been a very good friend and a mentor to me. But when I was scrubbing through the interviews, there was something that he said about what Freemasonry was, and he really said that it was just, Freemasonry is the hero's journey. It's the hero's quest. And that kind of put the pieces of all the fragments of the puzzle together for me. So I started building the story in the post-production as the hero's journey, and looking at Joseph Campbell's model of it, which a lot of films are based off of, anything from Star Wars to Lord of the Rings, and any of the classic Greek mythological stories and legends are all based on the hero's journey. So that it was really, Bob Davis that kind of hit the nail on the head, where, defining like Freemasonry is the hero's journey, meaning that every day in our lives, we have the choice to be either the hero or the villain of our own story, which is, in our degrees, we have these heroes and villains that are dramatized, and we decide if we're going to be the hero or the villain by the choices we make. And if we're going to react to our emotions or if we're going to subdue our passions. And that was a big lesson and a big takeaway for me for making the film.
Well, again, I had the pleasure to watch it twice, most recently, just to make sure that we were able to, again, really get a good grasp of what the message was that you were delivering. And both Steve and I thought it was very well put together. We could tell that it did take some time. I mean, we obviously did a little bit of research as well and noted that it took the 7 years, again, because it was part of the journey you took personally to get through there. But the feature of it, like I said, is just fantastic in the sense of it really does highlight what Masonry can do to the individual person themselves without giving all the secrets and mysteries that, again, as the obligations that we take that we're not able to share. So I think it was very well put together. I know Brother Sprott here is sitting here, and he's got a couple questions that he wants to throw at you as well. So, like I said, we're going to get right into it now. Thanks for sharing your Masonic career and how you kind of got into the first idea, which was kind of a love story of you and Masonry. And we'll continue moving forward.
Just going back a little bit before, what kind of inspired you to join Freemasonry? I know you touch on it in 33 and Beyond, but for our listeners that haven't seen the movie yet, what would you say? How did you get involved in Masonry?
Well, from a young age, I was always interested in philosophy and comparative religions and theology, just in general. And the reason for that was that, I had a pretty turbulent upbringing. I experienced a lot of death when I was young, growing up. My stepfather, who raised me, passed away the night after Christmas when I was 14 years old, literally right in front of me. And my grandmother, who I was close to, passed away, and a lot of people by the time I was young. So I naturally just started asking questions about, why does this happen? If there's the things that you're traditionally taught of as, a child growing up, whether you come from a Christian or a Jewish or Islamic background or any other denomination, you wonder why these things happen if there's this, all-loving, ever-present God. So I started really at a young age looking at these things in a philosophical context. And those are a lot of the types of books that I was reading. Like a lot of my friends were reading comic books, and I was reading Nicomachean Ethics by Aristotle.
Wow.
And I understood it, and so I had a natural knack for it. Like I got it. And then going forward, when I was living in England, I was studying at Westminster University, and when we had a class called Tort Law, and tort law is basically like English law, that contract law that goes back to, there's cases, it's like the Crown versus so-and-so from 1234, and the law still stands today. And it was just like,
right. Yeah. Like case law. Yeah.
Yeah. It was just like an awful class. And I'm like, why
pretty
why
dry.
do I have to take it? Yeah. But the cool thing about taking, going to university in England was that there's no class attendance required. You just have to take, the midterm and the final. So I had a couple buddies. We were like, this class is awful and we're not going to go to it. So we would skip class. And one day I ended up in front of the Grand Lodge of England, and I remember I saw the square and compass, and with the G in the middle of it, and I just it was like a light bulb that kind of went off my head. It was just like I haven't seen anything like that before, and I was always drawn to these ancient mysteries and these old legends and things like that. So when I dove into it, the first thing that I read was Mackey's Encyclopedia of Freemasonry, and I was hooked,
just drawn
from the beginning. Yeah, and it was just like
in.
It's like, okay, here's like a system of progressive moral science that is a combination of the best of mankind that draws truths and moral lessons from all different types of world religions and philosophy, all in one place.
Mm-hmm.
And then that incorporated with what I had read about how it's taught in a ritual format, that's when I started pursuing it. But it wasn't until years later that I actually knocked on the door of Freemasonry, that I thought I was ready, or it was my time to go through it, and that was in 2008. So that was almost 10 years after I'd first seen that building.
And was there anybody in your family that was a Mason too, or it was just that experience and again just the right place, right time in your life?
Yeah, not that I know of. I'm still not aware of any other members of my family that are Masons. It was just something that it called to me, yeah. And I think that I don't think that there's necessarily chaotic coincidences in life all the time. I mean, sometimes I guess there are, but it was just something that it really it drew me in, and I just remember being prepared, and then when I was about to, my first step, I'll say, going into the first degree, I had this. It just felt like a bolt of electricity went to my body, because I realized that what I was doing, George Washington and Voltaire and Benjamin Franklin and Mozart and all of these men that I had admired through time, they did the same thing.
Yeah. And
that really just was a very profound experience to have it happen to me.
Yeah, you know what? You said it right. Again, to our listeners who are not Masons and don't understand what we're talking about, it really is a light that goes off, or like you said, a bolt of lightning that strikes you. I remember when I became a Mason, our lodge was having an open house roughly, and it's in a little town here in Aurora in Ontario. And same thing. I, to my knowledge, have no members of my family in Masonry that I know of, and they all know I'm a Mason, and I'm very proud to share it and tell them all about it. But the building drew me. And then when you got inside and you're listening to some of the, I guess, esoteric studies that are part of it, and it was really intriguing, I just felt a fullness in my heart, if you will. And I remember my daughter sitting with me too for 2 hours and being bored as hell, but we got through it. I asked the right questions, and about a year later, I became a Mason myself. So it is all about timing. It's all about the right place, right time, and the willingness to want to be a better person, better man. I mean, again, it stands the test of time. Over 300 years old of modern day Masonry, and it's like you said, the same rituals that went through all those amazing individuals that you just talked about, that we take, and that 300 years from now are going to be delivered. It really does give you a foundation of betterment for yourself, for your family, for your community. So Masonry, I always say, why isn't everybody a Freemason?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So
there's a lot of quotes, that Pike would say, and I'm paraphrasing, but that if all men in the world were Freemasons, imagine the paradise of the world that we would live in.
Yeah.
And I think that's absolutely true.
Well, again, it's a place that is such a diverse group of men from all walks of life, from all denominations. And once we tile those doors, we are all exactly the same. We're all equal to each other. And not one is better than the other, and not, one stands out more than the other. But we build each other up. We support each other through everything, be it Masonic or outside the doors of these lodges. And so again, that's one of the things that I've really fallen in love with. It really is a brotherhood, again, to help you grow in all aspects of your life. And through the ritual that, again, we see within the movies that you've put together, touch and base on a few little points here and there without giving it all away. It truly is, delivered in a manner that is ages old, but we get it today, and they got it yesterday, and we're going to still get it tomorrow. So it's just, again, a fantastic fraternity to be a part of.
Absolutely.
So undoubtedly, you've had a very accomplished public Masonic career so far, I'd say. But in your private Masonic career, what have been some of the more impactful moments for you, that the public generally wouldn't know about and wouldn't see?
Well, when 33 and Beyond first came out, I was fortunate to, there were a lot of theatrical screenings that I was able to go to. And the one thing that I really took away from that and from the fraternity personally, that I really don't talk about much, but it's just something I hold dear to my heart. It's just the amount of friendships and true brothers, in the sense of, guys that really practice the craft, that it's prevalent and it echoes through their eyes and their words when you interact with them, and you feel like you've known them for your entire life. And
totally, yeah.
So, the friendships, and then, being able to, talk with those brothers on a confidential level and know that, they're going to maintain your confidence, because, just like, any, human beings are not perfect and Masons aren't perfect, but, there are some Masons in the world that, more than others, that you really can trust with anything, anything that you want to tell them, or, get off your chest, so to speak. So I think the friendships and the fellowship, and, and there's some other things too that, as involved as I am in the Scottish Rite, just some things even recently that I'm finding in some of the degrees, through the gematria and through some numerical patterns, that there's a path working through these certain signs and symbols, and the way that the floor work is set up, that there's a transformative experience when you go through the Scottish Rite degrees in particular, and then you go back into Blue Lodge, and when you're looking at things in Blue Lodge that aren't ever really explained,
it
like
makes more sense.
Yeah, it's just there are things that are, I always have the saying that, people say, well, the secret of Freemasonry is there are no secrets, and I think that that's completely incorrect, because the secrets are ineffable and they're not speakable. It's just like, if I ask you, do you love your father? Do you love your mother? And if you say yes, and I say why, you're gonna say, well, because they're my mother and my father. But why? So it goes to a place, as far as the secrets of Masonry go, that they literally are ineffable. It's a personal experience that you're not able to put it into human language, because it's a human construct, and these things that we experience are part of a divine construct of the aspect of deity that are personal for every Mason, and that are also kind of like an alchemical golden thread that unites all of us together. And some of us might be able to go into those depths of the crypts within the self to dwell in that place of that divine consciousness of deity a little bit more than others. But that goes into, the old saying that what you put into Freemasonry is what you get out of it as well too. So, that is definitely a truth, and that is definitely an aspect of knowledge of the fraternity, is that the more time and effort you put into studying the craft, there is something hidden there, and it's not hidden on purpose. It's just the nature of the divine veiling itself, because that's how it operates. You look at nature, you could look at a rose bush that has not bloomed yet, and it's veiling the beauty of what's yet to come.
Right.
And it's just through time and perseverance and patience that you then see the rose bloom. And at the same time, like Aldous Huxley, the philosopher, said that, the most beautiful aspect of a rose is when it blooms, because when it blooms, it begins to die. And understanding and recognizing that is an aspect of death also is beautiful, because death is not an evil tyrant. It's a friendly passenger that takes us from one place to another. And that when you see these things and you discover these true secrets, the ineffable secrets of Freemasonry, you get a glimpse of the hereafter. And the glimpse that I got is not anything that, I have yet to read or find anything in writing that relates it to my personal experience of what I've had in that transcendence.
That's amazing. Again, you're absolutely right. Everybody gets a personal kind of journey on their own. And there are certain aspects of Masonry that today I might not find the meaning behind it, but tomorrow I will, based on something that, is circumstantial to my everyday. And again, it's just blowing my mind listening to you.
I think that's also why it's so difficult to explain. I don't know about you guys, but I find it so difficult to explain what Freemasonry is to people that ask that aren't associated with Freemasons.
Well, the common thing is we're a fraternity of men making good men better. And then I get what does that mean, right? And so, Johnny, when you come across a person who's not a Freemason, a friend or a family, or just maybe a fan or somebody in your world.
He just says, here, watch my documentary.
Yeah, okay, there you go.
Well, I would answer that with saying that the way that I define it to people, because I have people ask me that question all the time, but I define it as it's a modern day mystery school. And Ernest Chapman, who worked on the film and who's in the film, also said that too. It's a modern day mystery school. But it's a modern-day mystery school that differs from anything else in the sense that it's a progressive moral science taught through degrees only, meaning that knowledge can only be attained through degrees, through steps, through initiations, where things that we were before we stepped through these gates of initiation and who we are when we come out of them are different. We're constantly evolving. But I, in layman's terms, I just describe it as it's a modern-day mystery school of a study of comparative philosophies and religions that seek to pull out the best aspects of those, to teach ethics, epistemology, or the study and origins of knowledge, and the metaphysical aspects of understanding who and what we really are, which is an ontological sense of looking at what we are, the study of being. But I kind of define it as it's a mystery school that draws upon all of the great world religions and philosophies, and it wraps it into one mythos, one story that there's different chapters which are taught through the degrees. Mm-hmm. And it's up to you how you ultimately interpret those. Now, there are standard interpretations for certain things that we learn, but it's up to the individuals how far they want to go. For instance, right now we're conferring the 26th degree for the Scottish Rite that I'm directing, and it's called Prince of Mercy or Scottish Trinitarian. And this degree is, the lines that I have in it are over 800 lines. So, that's like the master's lecture times 3 times, wow. And, but it gets into all of these aspects of comparing the religion of the Brahma and the ancient Aryan pre-Indo-Persian religions and the Druids and Judaism and early Christianity, that the aspects of deity, this idea of Trinity, has long existed before Christianity. And the point of it is that it goes back to that all men are equal, because from the dawn of time of the thinking man, we've all been searching for the same thing, which is that why are we here? Yep. What are we supposed to be doing?
What's our purpose?
Where do we go when we leave?
Yep.
And by studying these aspects of that question of what is Freemasonry, by studying that and really, really learning it, and then the hardest part is practical application, because you can kind of get caught up in your head sometimes, and everybody's still. You can have the best Mason in the world, who could be a saint, but he's still, at some point in his life, he's going to lose his temper or speak out of turn. But, you learn from those experiences, and then you just try to, not repeat the same mistake again. And Masonry is different in the sense of, going to church or going to temple or going to mosque, where, these are things that You have all of these other resources from all of these other religions and philosophies that you can draw upon. So you have kind of like a shifting kaleidoscope of colors and truths that, if this one isn't working for me today, I can look at this one. And that doesn't mean that you're breaking away from your faith or you're being heretical. Truth is truth. Mm-hmm. And that's it.
Yep. And you're absolutely right. Again, I mean, the things that we learn here are really teachings that you can apply to your everyday. And it's not just one set of rules or one set of teachings. There's so many that apply. I mean, I'll constantly just reflecting on working tools, for example, to guide me in some pretty sticky situations every once in a while. And those are just one little aspect of our Blue Lodge that really kind of gets you forward. So, yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And speaking of the working tools as well, too, I mean, there are, things that we're taught about different things of the working tools, which are monitorial, like the 24-inch gauge or the ruler and the square and different working tools that we have, or different instruments. That there are other levels of understanding those as well, too. Like, with the ruler, and with what happens with the ruler in particular instances is that, that is something that to look at, that, a freedom of speech, for example.
Yep.
And that, with the square, how it pertains to the heart.
Right.
And I'm saying this in a coded way.
Yep.
But that Masons will understand, but how it pertains to the heart, that no man has the right to judge another man for the beliefs and the truths that he holds in his heart.
Right.
And then the same thing with the mind as well, too. Yet we are to admonish gently each other of our errors, and to remain open-minded, to remain open-hearted, and to also, even though we have the gift of speech and freedom of speech, that sometimes we need to hold our tongue and listen.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the purpose of secrecy and silence. It's not to hide these things from the world. The ancient adepts believed that the first step toward becoming an adept or a master of the hidden arts of knowledge was to make yourself silent, to be able to master being able to handle the voices in your head and in your heart and the traumas that you go through in life.
Mm-hmm.
And by doing that, and that's the same aspect of meditation, that you're silent, and then what you experience in that, that secrecy is only to be shared with others who have gone through that type of initiatory phase. Because if you speak about that to someone that has not been initiated, then that can cause disharmony. And the entire point of everything in life is to reach a state of equilibrium.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Wow. That's, again, I love how you put it all very eloquently put together, and it really just describes the heart of what Masonry is and the meat and potatoes of it. Again, it's a foundation built hundreds of years ago that still has survived the test of time over and over again, and really gives you the little things that I go back to. If everybody was a Mason or studied Masonry, they would learn to, turn the next cheek and continue about their day in a more harmonious way, or just, help that person down when they're walking past, and really strive to better their community, which betters themselves and betters their own household. So again, there's so many foundations that Masonry is built on, and it's just a fantastic order to be a part of, to really get into it, to dive into all these esoteric meetings, the numerology behind it, the symbols behind it. They're all words that can resonate beyond what they actually are. They resonate beyond the word that they are. Again, but you have to find it within your own inner being, and it's
right.
just fantastic. Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to add to that. I mean, if you look at, I think a really good example of that is once you get the level of that ineffability of talking about these symbols and things like that, and these meanings of the ritual, it's like mathematics. What is the number one? It's the concept of measurement, but what is it? It's not physical. It's not something you can hold. Yet mathematics and the metaphysical constructs and governs the physical world. And that's something that when you think about that like that, the power of symbols, the power of the language of symbols, and applying those into your heart and mind, I mean, you're going into a place that's far older than the earth even. And that's, one of the major steps on the bridge between going from the square or the flat cube to the triangle, to the delta, to the divine. So going from the earthly realm to the divine. That's part of, that bridge building. And that's what we are as Masons. Ultimately, we're kind of like bridge builders that are trying to set this precedence. And I just wanted to add that.
That's perfect. I guess getting into now some of the movies that you've created here. The first one, again, being the 33 and Beyond. We heard a little bit of a trailer of it, and again, highly recommend it to anybody who's not seen it yet. When you were building that, and again, we know it took you about 7 years to get there because you really wanted to portray the proper message and how to put that together, and took the time, which was just fantastic. What was, I guess, some of the feedback you were getting before you really put it out there? Like, I'm sure that you went to your own lodge to talk about this idea, or maybe to your Grand Lodge. Was there any kind of, setbacks that they were a little bit hesitant? Some resistance. I mean, here we are, just shy of a year into this podcast, and in the beginning it was a little bit, I wouldn't say easy, certainly tough to be able to kind of give the message out there in a public forum where, again, we didn't share all those things that we're not supposed to as per our obligations we take within our rituals, but enough that we can strike, the curiosity of the public and engage in positive outlook of what Masonry is all about. There's so much pop culture out there that kind of dispels it and tries to put us in a negative spin. And so one of the purposes and reasons why we did this show was to really bring that positive light. And it's been a great success so far. We're still just on the beginning of this journey here. But tell us, when you brought up that kind of idea of creating that film and that documentary, what were some of the things that you were thinking of? Like, what was in your mind? Was it for Masons to understand? Was it for the public? What was some of the resistance you might have gotten through different bodies that you were trying to help promote?
From the get-go, it was for the world, because, I think that the world has a right to understand and feel the beauty of something that is so impactful that can make you better, that makes you part of a better world. There was a lot of nervousness around the project in the beginning because nothing like that had ever been done, other than like exposés of different networks that, were secretly revealing handshakes and, other things, which there's just no point of even doing that, because unless you're the degree team or the candidate, like there's no point of just seeing like what this physical form is. The whole meaning becomes lost. But there was a lot of nervousness. There were a couple really big champions of the film that without them, it probably would not, it wouldn't have been possible, and two of them were in Guthrie, Bob Davis, who I had mentioned, who was the secretary there at the time, and also Dr. Jim Trestner, who was he passed away in the past couple years. A genius man, and he was the director of the work there. But they helped champion it, and they saw the vision of it, and they just saw that the world is changing, and film and video content is the new media format that is going to be around forever, and it's a good way to reach the world, to let the world know that Freemasonry is not some nefarious society, but it's a society of men that are trying to make themselves better and and in turn making the world better, and doing that through charity and enhancing their faith and their own beliefs, and exemplifying the most important attribute, which is love toward one another and toward mankind. And then some of the other champions too were, the Nashville Valley Scottish Rite. They were huge champions of it, because, in the Scottish Rite section of the film, a lot of the backdrops and the props and some of the reenactments of some of the things that you see, like most of that was done in Nashville. And the secretary down there is Dan Jones, and so Dan and Ernest Chapman also down there, and John Eberly, and all those guys, like, they were really big champions of it, and they got it, what I was trying to do. And then, my Grand Lodge in California, they were very, very supportive. There's two past Grand Masters from California in the film, R. Stephen Doan and John Cooper, Alan Casselou, who's the Grand Secretary. They had us premiere the film at the Grand Lodge during annual communications.
That's great.
That's how supportive they were of it.
Yeah, that's great that you got that support. I mean, you find so many stories today where, a lot of older Masons or, higher ups, they're very hesitant to take on that kind of responsibility or seem to be involved in something like that. They say, it's not our job to reinvent Masonry or anything, but I think what they have to understand is, we're not reinventing what happens inside the lodge. We're just we're not reinventing, but trying to, create other outlets to inform people, inform the general public about, our fraternity, right?
Right. That's absolutely right. I mean, we went from, books to computer processing and to the internet and to video content, and eventually we're going to have holograms, and AI is going to be prevalent in the world, and in 100 to 200 years, who knows? I mean, but again, the great thing about Freemasonry as a whole is that even if someone were to watch on video, all of these different degrees, they still would not be getting the secrets of Masonry, and I don't, the grips and the tokens and the passwords and all these things, those are secret to us because they're secret to us because we make an oath and we say that we will keep them secret, to enhance the experience of the person going through the degrees. But the real secrets, again, if someone, a Callan or an eavesdropper sees these things, it's not going to do anything for them.
Right,
They're
exactly.
not going to grasp it.
It's really trivial to anyone that's not a Mason.
A handshake that we learn doesn't give us the keys to the world, or again, the dispelling the myth of Masons run the world and stuff. We do none of that, and so it is a great platform to put this on that media. Like you said, once upon a time, it was, I think, ads that were put in the classifieds, very small print of a Mason Lodge having an open door kind of thing to potentially have some new initiates come through. Or if you knew somebody and they were super secretive of even discussing it with friends and family, or at the time, now today we have all this wonderful technology. And if we use it for good, we can really kind of reach the masses and just share with what we can to kind of strike their interest or their curiosity. A lot of the times that we find new Masons that come through our doors, most of them have had family members that are there, but they didn't even know that we were here. Thank goodness that we do these open doors and these community events to let the community know that we still exist, we are still here, and we're more than happy to open our doors, to bring you into the lodge room, to show you some of the history of what happens. But when we get to our ritual and stuff, those doors get tiled and you need to be a member. And that's just how it is. So again, that's fantastic. When you started this journey, was being a writer or director always something in your forefront? Like as a young boy, were you like, I want to do that? Or did this kind of flow through becoming a Mason again? Or can you share with us a little bit on how that became to be?
Yeah, I mean, I was always interested in storytelling. I had no idea I would end up doing what I was doing, to be honest. But I always loved movies. I loved film. But my expression through storytelling, my first format was through music, which was a big part of my life. And that came from my grandfather. He was a guitar player in a country and western honky tonk band and did bluegrass. And he would always tell us these folk tales and these stories, and just the way he told them, it was just fascinating. And I grasped how powerful the power of a story is. And there was a really good quote that the candidates coach at my lodge had said. His name's James Lincoln Warren, but he had said that it doesn't matter whether or not the story is true. It matters what you get out of the story.
Oh, exactly.
And I thought
I say that all the time about Masonry.
Yeah, I thought that was profound. But I had no idea. I always loved writing. I love, in the sense of, like, I would write in journals and poetry and things like that. But it wasn't until in a formal manner that I got into advertising, where I had to write a script and what happens in this 2-minute segment of what's going to happen, and how do I tell a story in 2 minutes. And then I got into film, and I'm like, oh wow, I got 90 minutes to tell a story. And then drawing together, like, my musical background with my video background was just like the perfect medium for bringing all of my life experiences together to share with the world.
Awesome. Well, Johnny, we're going to get to that point now where I think we're going to dive into your latest and newest film, Illuminated. I got a little snippet here that we're going to play in a moment, but Illuminated features the true historical account of the Illuminati, exposed the actual ritual of secret society, and answers the age-old question whether or not the order still exists. So with that, Steve is going to play the trailer of that latest movie, and we got a couple questions to ask you shortly after.
Sure.
The Illuminati was a secret society.
Those men use those secrets to their benefit.
When you have this goal, you become dangerous.
And there was also the hidden assumption that if anyone has any secret knowledge about alchemy and magic, then it must be people of social standing.
Sometimes we're not ready to understand those concepts.
What you have to think about is that the idea of initiation was equated with enlightenment.
It was necessary to do this behind closed doors.
It's because the Catholic Church owned most land, knowledge, your soul even.
The Illuminati was definitely on the side of the Enlightenment and very much opposed to the ongoing influence of the Jesuit order.
They were advocates for free thought, so it had some effect in the popular culture.
Does that not complete the work that the Illuminati itself had been set out to do, to enlighten the mind? This is the age of the secret society.
And that was the trailer for Illuminated. I have to say, it was July of last year. I was sitting at home and I got Android box, and I'm going through my on-demand, and up pops Illuminated. And I thought, what's this? And I took a quick watch of it, and I was pretty fascinated. And I thought, oh my gosh, like, this is just blowing my mind right now. This is amazing. And now we fast forward to a few months later, and producer Steve Sprott says, oh, I got Johnny Royal on a podcast for us. And I was like, wait a minute, I think I just watched one of his movies. And boom, here we are today.
There you go.
So again, another film just recently released, July 30th, 2019 was the date it came out. And a very controversial topic in Masonry, obviously. I mean, talking about Freemasonry and Illuminati, a lot of the times we get the two mixed up, or at least the general public thinks, though. Some Masons might even cringe at the fact when they're asked, are you an Illuminati because you're a Freemason? I mean, there must have been so much, pressure of thinking by hitting on this topic and creating such a film. I'm sure you were maybe hit with a barrage of conspiracy theorists or different people of that nature. What inspired you, Johnny, to take this topic on and share it with the world?
The idea for this film came about from so there was a good friend of mine, Joseph Wages, who's also in the film and who's one of the executive producers of the film. He had translated a book with Reinhard Markner, who lives in Germany. They had transcribed or translated the original rituals of the Illuminati, and I got the book and was like, oh, this is really fascinating. And then I got a call from another good friend, Adam Kendall, who was in 33 and Beyond, and who was also in Illuminated. He said, "Hey, Joseph Wages is in town. He's giving a talk at South Pasadena Masonic Lodge on the Illuminati, and I was going to bring him over afterwards." I was like, "Yeah, definitely. I'd love to meet him, talk with him." And me and Joe hit it off right away. He's a really brilliant, funny guy, and we're working on a new project together as well too. But I'd mentioned to Joe, I'm like, do you ever think about doing like a documentary on this? And he was like, I've been approached by a couple of people, but it just didn't seem like the right fit. So before 33 and Beyond had its world premiere, I did a private screening at my home for him with it, and he was like, "I'm in. Let's do this." And my wife, Angel, who's my partner in Praetorian Motion Pictures, she came on as executive producer, and we just started constructing the idea of, what the story was going to be about. And at first we were going to really focus on the book of just, going through the rituals. But the further that I started studying about the Illuminati, I really found that the real story was about Weishaupt himself, the founder of the order. And the reason being is that the rituals, they literally mirror his personal life. And it's a story. It's kind of a sad story in a way of, there's a boy who's, by the time he's 5 years old, both his parents die, and his godfather, who is the director of Ingolstadt University and the book censor, he takes him in, and his name is Baron Johann von Eichstadt, and Eichstadt is, the Catholic Church puts a ban on the majority of Enlightenment era publications during this time. So we're talking about philosophy books, basically, that they deem heretical, and they're in no way heretical. It's philosophy, and he teaches this to Weishaupt over the years. So Weishaupt immediately is an outcast because Germany was a very, very heavily controlled Catholic country, heavily influenced by the Catholic Church. So Weishaupt gets his law degree, I think by the age of 21, and becomes a professor at Ingolstadt. He becomes the first non-Jesuit professor there. So he's the first non-Catholic, non-Jesuit. So he's an outcast, and I like that aspect of him. Like he's like this rebel, and he's a rebel in the sense of like knowledge. But the Illuminati really started out as in 1774 as a private book club, basically, and all they were doing was they were reading from these banned books, and that's how it all started. And as far as Freemasonry goes and the connection to it, there was a connection to it, I should say. They infiltrated Freemasonry, and in the end, what the Illuminati became was, really nothing more than a clandestine form of Freemasonry. So they took the floor work and the ceremonial aspects of the strict observance system of Freemasonry and high-grade Freemasonry in Germany, and they applied Weishaupt's philosophy to it. So, it'd be like taking our first 3 degrees, stripping away all the language, and then adding different language to it, but keeping the same signs, tokens, and passwords and things like that, but giving them different meanings.
Yeah, that was one of the things I got from watching the film. Exactly, that was, again, many of the original Illuminati guys were Masons to infiltrate, to be able to kind of, I guess, have other Masons listen to their new philosophies, their new rituals, and then kind of convert them, right? And so that kind of on its own was a cool point, because I guess that was where once upon a time the connection of Freemasonry and Illuminati first became to be, but wasn't actually the case, because as a Freemason now, I often get that question, well, you must be Illuminati. Well, no, I'm not. And I don't know if that order even exists or if it even isn't around anymore. Is it around? Do you know?
It's not around.
Yeah.
Not in the form that it was. I mean, if you read their actual rituals, I mean, there's one of their degrees, it's literally a person sitting in a chair, and the head of the degree is the degree team is literally just asking him a series of rhetorical questions, which the candidate doesn't answer, and this goes on for like 8 to 9 hours. So the Illuminati rituals, other than some of the higher ones, are really, really boring.
Sounds almost torturous.
Yeah, exactly. So that the Illuminati, as far as the Bavarian Illuminati, does not exist. People nowadays throw around the term, like the Illuminati, the secret group, and I think it's more of a social networking type of thing, where people are like, "Oh, Illuminati," and like there's Jay-Z and Beyonce, but I laugh at it because like when Jay-Z throws up the delta symbol, the triangle, what they don't realize is that's actually the ancient Hermetic sign of fire,
right?
And the all-seeing eye in the triangle, that comes from Christianity. So,
exactly. And again, everybody thinks those are like very predominant figures in our today modern society that they must be Illuminati.
Yeah.
They're so successful. Well, they're successful because they work hard at their craft,
Yeah,
and they put in the time.
In the words of Adam Kendall in the movie, he says, conspiracies just refuse to die.
Yeah.
And that statement is very strong, because people that aren't happy with their lives, that aren't happy with the government and whatever's going on in the world, they want to have someone to blame for these things. So they create these their own mythologies and their own stories that there's reptilian shapeshifters and aliens that are in human form that are controlling the world, and it's like, okay, so if you if you think that, you still have you have free will to change your life to make it better, but it's just the perpetuation of people thinking that the Illuminati still exists is just it's a lack of self motivation for, I think, a lot of people in the conspiracy community to get up and to do something about their lives to make it better, and it's just laziness.
Yeah, I would agree to that. I'd agree to that 100%.
I mean, I know a lot of high school kids hop on board with the Illuminati stuff, and when you think about it, it sounds so exciting, and this huge conspiracy. But as you get older, you see these grown people online having these full-on discussions that are just so ridiculous. It's just it's humorous, but the reality is, I mean, it does affect our fraternity, and I think going back to what we were saying before about having an online presence now as Masons and having these platforms, doing these documentaries, it really allows us to kind of combat these conspiracy theorists. I think the conspiracy theorists got a lot of they were able to put their stuff online before we were, and there was an abundance of it, and we kind of weren't fighting back with our information because, Masonry was behind closed doors. We didn't want to, upset anybody. We wanted to keep everything secretive off the internet, off our TV screens. But now that we are putting that information out there, I think that we're really kind of combating that and fighting back and putting real information and so I think that's what we have to do too, is just keep putting that information out there.
Yeah, I agree, and who knows if those things will ever die out. But some of the most powerful enemies we have to battle as Masons are superstition and intolerance and tyranny and despotism, and we battle those things with faith, hope, and charity. That's and the sword of truth, which is the words that we speak.
Yeah, totally agree.
So you just touched a bit on that, as Steve kind of was also mentioning as well. I mean, as a Freemason, to educate ourselves and I guess the world in general, what do you suggest how we can separate ourselves from that negative pulp culture that's out there that surrounds our craft, and possibly the tie-in to, again, a lot of assumptions that, well, Freemasons and Illuminati are kind of one and the same. What do you see that we could, again, kind of really just dispel that and bring it more into a positive light? I mean, people are going to have their own opinion regardless of what we tell them or what we share with them, but what are your thoughts on that?
I mean, the only ways to separate ourselves from the negative connotations and these conspiracy theories are, one, to educate ourselves about the truth and the factual history and the actual elements of what's true and what's not true, and two, by our own actions. Each and every individual Mason in the world determines that for themselves. So, it's up to the individual, and it's up to the collective as a whole, from the top down, to educate and empower the leaders of the lodges to instruct with proper tools of education and historical facts the members of the lodges, and then for the members themselves to make a choice on a daily basis to use the weapons, in a sense, that you're given, which are faith, hope, charity, brotherly love, belief, and truth, to go out into the world and to battle it that way. That's the only thing that we can do. And that battle has been raging, going on since the dawn of time.
Yeah, and it will continue.
There's still religious wars in the world now that people they're still killing each other because they believe in one book over another, which is just completely stupid.
Yeah, I agree. When you were putting together this Illuminated film, what were some of the more interesting moments that you discovered?
So there were two things that were really, really cool. One is that we got to a friend of ours. He's a count, and he owns a castle in Bavaria called Schloss Eggesberg. And so we stayed there. That was like our base, our headquarters. We got to stay in this 9th century castle.
Wow.
And hang out and have dinner with the count every night. He's hilarious.
That's a nice friend to have.
Yeah, he's just super, just a great guy. And he has a library, or not a library, sorry, a museum section built onto the castle that specializes in Baron Thomas de Bassus, who was a member of the Illuminati. So we got to see a lot of those original artifacts. And then also, we got to visit with one of the living descendants of one of the original members of the Illuminati. And just for confidential reasons, I'm going to leave out their last name because I promised I would do so. Mm-hmm. But we got to go to their castle, more of a compound. But the son is a baron, and they pulled out this old box, and lo and behold, there are handwritten documents from both Adam Weishaupt and Baron Adolf von Kaniga, who really created the Illuminati. And I'm sitting there with white gloves on, flipping through the original rituals, like handwritten, and holding that in my hand. And on their property too, they had a Minerval church, and the Minerval church was used to confer the first 3 degrees of the Illuminati. So we got to check that out. There's a couple other things that I found out that aren't in the film that I can't disclose for security reasons with families. But I got to meet some of the living descendants and learn some of the family traditions that they carry on.
That's amazing.
How cool is that? Yeah.
So you put in a lot of research. You went, to some of these amazing locations that you discovered that I'm sure you weren't even expecting. You got to read some of the original documents and whatnot, and all the people that you interviewed and whatnot in the Illuminated for the film. Are there any personal questions left unanswered that are sitting still with Johnny Royal?
As far as the Illuminati goes?
Yeah.
No, I understand who they were and what they were trying to do pretty well. And, the amazing thing about the Illuminati is they were fully exposed, and Eric Bertoli in the film talks about, there's a difference between being a secret society and a society with secrets, whereas, he says it, and he makes a good point that as a society with secrets, you can tell people you're a Freemason, but as a secret society, which the Illuminati was, you were not allowed to tell people you were even a member.
Yeah.
So there's a big difference there. And, also too, that the Illuminati, they actually required their members to be Christians or non-practicing Jews to enter, to be tapped. And I found out some other interesting things too, that, the Skull and Bone Society at Yale, a lot of their initiatory rites, and their tomb, they call it, they structured it after the Illuminati, but with Masonic elements to it. And they have a painting down there that has 3 skulls, and it's written in German, which translates to who the wise man, the king, the beggar, the fool, all are the same at death. But I got to understand that, and then I got to see some of the original letters that were written between a member of the Illuminati to both Benjamin Franklin and John Adams, who actually wrote back to them.
Wow.
Which was interesting, and to read those. But I don't have any unanswered questions, just why people are so obsessed with perpetuating something that doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
Well, Johnny, we heard there's rumors of more films coming down the pipes, possibly coming out this year. Is that any truth to those rumors?
Yes. So this year, after 33 and Beyond, I said, I'm never doing a documentary again. Then there's Illuminated, and I said, never did a documentary again. And then we're working on one more documentary, and it's for the Shriners.
Okay.
So it's going to be the story of the Shriners, which is going to be really cool because we're going to touch on the founding and then through the Roaring 20s and 30s, which is exciting. And the Shrine Hospital and the culture of the Shrine, and
that's so cool.
Yeah. That was the brain behind starting that was the potentate for Al-Qaeda Shriners up in Portland, Carl Thompson, and we were talking about he was like, I want to do a video for Al-Qaeda's anniversary coming up, and I said, well, if we're going to do that, might as well, as much as we're going to have to film, we might as well just do a feature-length film on the Shriners. And he's like, okay. So that's going to be coming out toward the end of the year. And then after that, what we're working on now is a trilogy of scripted features. So these are, they fall in the realm of like supernatural, psychological thriller, paranormal. And it's kind of like the log line of the synopsis is there's the family patriarch of this family kind of goes out of the picture, and as the family starts to unravel and slowly kind of go insane together from a traumatic event that had happened to them when they were children, something that actually did happen when they were children that was It's scientifically and logically based, but there's supernatural elements ascribed to it that when they're older, these things, it's a determination of, like, on a human level, how a family, as individuals, how they each handle a singular trauma in a different way. And then it goes into, some of these older aspects of, I was heavily inspired by Dansbury and Lovecraft and some of those writers about, kind of creating my own pantheon of gods that are ascribed to, forces of nature that we don't fully understand yet, like black holes and things like that.
Yeah.
So, and that first film that we're working on for that is called Son of the Dawn.
Son of the Dawn. Awesome. So you're quite the busy guy still, huh? I love it.
Busy.
That's good. That's awesome. I always say, if I'm not busy, I don't know what to do with myself. So again, masonry is a good place to keep busy. And again, I mean, the two films that you made, fantastic. Can't wait for the American Shriners of Freemasonry to come out. Certainly looking forward to the trilogy that you're also working on. Didn't even know that was coming out, so I'm glad that we asked the rumors question. I guess the last thing real quick before we look at wrapping things up is if our listeners are interested in looking to find the 33 and Beyond, as well as the movie Illuminated, where can they find that? Where can they purchase a copy? How can they come about looking? Is it on Netflix? Is it on, Amazon? Where can we find it?
Yeah, so for both of them, the best place to go is on Amazon for both 33 and Beyond and Illuminated. We actually just got our own channel on Amazon, so we're going to be adding content to that over the years. But that's just amazon.com/ the letter V as in Victor /Praetorian, so the name of the company. Okay. And I sent that to you guys, so you have that link if you want to post that. But
we can post that.
Yeah, go to Amazon. And then for the rest of the world, Illuminated is available in Germany and Japan now on Amazon, and it's also available in 100 different countries on iTunes. But we prefer for 33 and Beyond for everybody to check it out on Amazon for the best quality, and that helps us the most too for viewership. So, and just as a side note, Illuminated recently passed 100 million streams on Amazon.
Wow, congratulations. That's a huge accomplishment.
Yeah, so it made it one of the most watched documentaries of 2019, and it also made Yahoo's Best of Documentary list and Collider's Best of Documentary list. And there's some mixed reviews on it because a lot of it is talking about the conspiracy community. They just refuse to.
They just won't buy into it. Yeah, they just.
Yeah, so they rate it 1 star regardless of how accurate it is, how beautiful the film is. So don't go off of some of their crazy ratings that they do, but it's a beautiful film. If you want to know the true story of the Illuminati, definitely watch it, and I think people will enjoy it.
Well, I absolutely concur with that. I watched it now twice as well, just to familiarize myself with talking to you today, Johnny, and it's certainly an eye-opener and really just very informative and feels very truthful to what it was, how it was built, and the members that supported it. So again, thank you so much. Johnny, we're going to wrap up today. Again, we want to give you a big thanks on behalf of the First Three Knocks for taking the time out today of your busy schedule to talk with us, to give our listeners a taste of the 2 films that you've already put together and all the other things that you're working on. Again, just words can't express, brother, that you took that time to us, and that's what Masonry is all about. So once again, thank you so much. We hope that your future projects are a great success, just like these last 2, and we hope to keep in touch with you.
Thanks so much, and I'll just close with saying that I've been very blessed, and with our company, my wife runs it with me. She EPs, so a lot of the beautiful stuff that you see in Illuminated that's her, with the costumes and the lighting. And so I just close with saying, I love my wife and I love my life.
Awesome. Well,
I
again,
stole that from Jerry Maguire, by the way.
Oh, listeners, that was the first 3 Knocks with Johnny Royal. Can't get a better podcast than that.
Well, thank you guys for having me on.
No problem, Johnny.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of The First 3 Knocks. Happy to meet, sorry to part, happy to meet again.